In this video, we're going to look at learning target 624, which is identifying domain and range of a data set. So within this learning target, we are going to be talking about what defines a function. And this whole unit is called functions, but functions are very specific relationships. And a function is a relation where each input, which is an x, has exactly one output, which is y. And for me, this is a very complicated definition to understand. This took me a long time to figure out what that means and how I can then use it to figure out if something is or is not a function. So what helps me a lot is thinking about an analogy to this. So I think about birthdays, and birthdays tell me what is and is not okay. So I'm going to write like a quick little sentence that helps us remember what is and is not okay for functions. So it's okay for two different people to have one birthday, but not okay for one person to have two different birthdays. Oops. So it's okay for two different people to have one birthday. So if me and Miss Buffky's birthday is on September 10th, that's okay. We were born on the same day. Awesome. But it's not okay for me, one person, to have two different birthdays. So my birthday cannot be on September 10th and on December 12th. Okay, so I get only one birthday. And that's the same thing for functions. Every x can only go to one y. So every person, every x only has one birthday. So 4 can only go to 6, for example. It's okay if 4 and 5 both go to 6. That just means they share a birthday. But it's not okay for 4 to go to 6 and 4 to go to 7. So within that, you can find the domain and the range of any relation or function. And so the domain is going to be our inputs, which are our x values. And our range is our outputs and our y values. I always remember which is which because they come alphabetically. So domain comes first in the alphabet before range, x comes before y. So domain and x go together, range and y. So there's a few different representations to be able to see domain and range, and we're going to look at one of each. So there's kind of 4 types that we're going to look at. A set of points. This is called a mapping diagram, a table, and a graph. And so this set of points, this got cut off for some reason, but it's 2, 1. So for a set of points, we're finding the domain and range and determining if it's a function or not. So domain, what we're going to do to find our domain and range is we're just going to list all the values. And I want to actually go back up to my table. I want to add one thing before we start. And this is going to go, I'm going to write all the way across both boxes because it applies to both. We need them to be in numerical order with no repeats. So they need to be in order and do not repeat numbers. So when I go to write my domain, I'm going to find all my x values. Domain comes first, x comes first, and I'm going to make a list. In order, no repeats. And so your domain and range are going to be in these curly brackets, and then the list is going to be separated by a comma. I like to go through and underline all the ones I'm looking at or circle them. So 2, 3, -1, 0, 5, 2. And we need to go in order, smallest to biggest. So as I'm looking at the ones I underlined, the smallest number is -1. Then I like to cross it out lightly as I go so I know that I used it. Next smallest is 0. 1 would be next, but I don't have any. Then 2. And I have 2 2s, but I don't write them down twice because I have no repeats. So just write down a 2 and cross them both off. Then 3. Then 5. And I end my little bracket. I'm pretty bad at drawing them. This one was the prettiest one I think I've ever drawn. Most of mine look like this. You cannot just use regular parentheses though, because domain and range are specific. So you have to try to draw this little curly bracket. And then range is just all the Y's. So for me, all the ones I didn't underline, the ones that are left. And again, in order, smallest to biggest. So smallest is -4, then -2, then 1. Again, I have it twice, but I'm only going to write it once. And then 3, and then 7. So this is my domain and my range. Domain is all the X's, in order, no repeats. Range, all the Y's, in order, no repeats. We also need to determine if it's a function or not. And so I lightly cross them off so I could still kind of see them. But a function, remember, the only thing that I can't have is one person that has 2 birthdays. So in this case, what I'm looking for in a set of points is the same X value, but 2 different Y values. So the only time that I had a repeat in my X values was with 2. 2 goes with -4. That's what the rule is. Now I need to make sure that if there's a 2 again, it also goes to -4. So my 2 was at the end, and it does not go to -4. So this is not a function. If even one person has 2 birthdays, it's not a function. So that's a set of points. In a table, you can imagine, works almost the exact same way, except often our points are in order, at least the X's typically are. So I want you to pause the video and try this table and then come back and you'll see the answer. So I have my domain. This was already in order, nothing repeated. So it's basically just this column. And same thing here, in order, nothing repeated. That's my range. To figure out if it's a function or not, remember I need to see if any one person has 2 birthdays. In a table, that would be like 2 rows that start with the same thing. So if I had -2, 5, and then -2, 9, that would not be okay. Since all my X's are different, there's no opportunity for one person to have 2 birthdays. So this is, in fact, a function. Every person is different, and every person has their own birthday. So now this mapping diagram is probably the newest thing. Maybe you've seen it, maybe you have not, but it's either labeled domain or the default is that the domain is on the left. So there are no repeats in mapping diagrams and they should be in order. So domain and range should be super easy for a mapping. We just have -35, -5, 0. And the range again should be in order with no repeats. It's not always, but almost always. And then figuring out if it's a function, I want to see if there's one person that has 2 birthdays. And so basically I'm looking for if one of my people over here splits and goes to 2 different birthdays. And that does happen. -35, one person has a birthday on the 1st and a birthday on the 21st, which is not allowed. This is not a function. And last one, I'm going to have you try this one on your own, but on a coordinate plane, it's basically just a list of points. So I'd recommend like labeling every point, -5, -3, labeling all of these, and then doing it the same way we did these 2. So pause the video, do this on your own, and then come back to see the answer. So I have my domain and my range, and I labeled all my points so that you can see if you accidentally messed up with labeling. To determine if it's a function, remember I'm looking for one person, one x value that has 2 birthdays. You can look at the points and figure it out the same way we did these, but you can also look to see if it passes what we call the vertical line test. If you can draw a vertical line and touch more than one point, it is not a function. And you can see here, my vertical line touches both of these points, so that means it is not a function. And so these are the 4 types that you will see to determine domain and range, and then whether or not they are functions.